Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation on how to effectively engage with stakeholders. We are Group 8 from George Brown College and today we will guide you through key strategies and practical insights on stakeholder engagement. Let me introduce our team members Kizum, Trupti, Mrityunjay, Aditi and Kanapan. Each of us has contributed to researching and preparing this tutorial to make it insightful and engaging for you. Through this presentation, we aim to show not only why stakeholder engagement matters, but also how it can be done effectively to achieve project success. So, let's get started. In this presentation, we will start with a clear introduction to what stakeholder engagement actually means. Then we will look at why stakeholder engagement matters, especially how stakeholder influence project success and why engaging with them properly reduces risk and increases overall satisfaction. After that, we will go through the key principles and techniques that guide effective stakeholder engagement. This overview gives you a roadmap of what to expect as we move through the presentation. Stakeholder engagement is important because stakeholders have a direct impact on how smoothly a project runs and whether it succeeds. Their decisions, resources, and expectations shape the direction of the project. Effective stakeholder leads to a several major benefits. We gain a clear understanding of stakeholder needs and priorities. Stakeholders feel more satisfied and supported because they are included in the process. It reduces risk, misunderstandings, and unexpected issues, and overall, it ensures the project stays aligned with organizational goals. When stakeholders are engaged the right way, project experience fewer surprises and are much more likely to succeed.
So, what exactly is a stakeholder? Some people use the word stakeholder to refer to just the customer, but in the project management sense, we define it as any person or group of people who have an interest in the project and can impact it. In that sense, this includes team members, clients, suppliers, competitors, regulators, as well as many other people and groups that would be considered stakeholders. Every project depends on the people who have interest in its outcomes. These individuals and groups can shape the direction of the work by offering input, providing resources, and influencing key decisions. When we actively involve stakeholders, we gain a clearer insight into what truly matters to them. This helps the team stay focused on the right objectives, prevents avoidable issues, and strengthens overall trust and cooperation. So ultimately, engaging stakeholders early and consistently helps ensure that the project stays on track and supports the broader goal of the organization. According to the PMBOK, stakeholder management has certain process areas in which successful projects rely on understanding and involving the people who have stake in the work. Firstly, we identify the stakeholders by determining who might influence the project or be affected by it. This includes individuals, teams, and other groups. We also assess their interests, concerns, and their potential impact on the project. Second would be to outline how we interact with each stakeholder. This involves building tailored strategies that address their needs, communication preferences, and desired level of involvement. Then, as the project progresses, we actively work with the stakeholders to keep them informed, address their issues, as well as encouraging participation in decision making and project activities. And lastly, we want to track how well our engagement approaches are working. This helps us adjust our strategies, maintain strong relationships, and ensure that stakeholders remain aligned with project objectives. Identifying stakeholders is an ongoing activity, but it's not only something that we do at the beginning of a project. We usually gather information from several places, such as the business case, the project charter, organizational structures, expert insights, and even change requests to understand who is connected to the project. The result of this would be a stakeholder register, which captures key details about each stakeholder. This includes their name, their role, what they care about, how much influence they hold, their specific expectations, how they prefer to receive their information, and the best approach for engaging with them throughout the project. One of the stakeholder analysis tools that we utilize is the Power Interest Grid. This helps us decide how to approach different stakeholders by looking at how much influence they have and how invested they are in a project. As you can see in the visual, there are around 4 levels to this. Firstly, high influence and high interest stakeholders. These stakeholders need close attention and active involvement. Then, high influence but limited interest, where we can keep them satisfied by providing the right level of information without overwhelming them. Low influence but strong interest stakeholders is where we can offer regular updates and make sure they feel informed and included. And lastly, low influence and low interest stakeholders, where minimal oversight is needed and simply monitoring is enough.
Another tool we use for stakeholder analysis is the salience model. This model helps us determine which stakeholders need the most attention by looking at three key attributes. First is power. This refers to how much influence or authority a stakeholder has over the project, whether they can support it, block it, or impact major decisions. Legitimacy. Legitimacy is about how appropriate or relevant the stakeholders' involvement is. In other words, do they have a valid stake or responsibility in the project? Third, urgency. Urgency reflects how quickly the stakeholders' needs or concerns must be addressed. If something is time sensitive, that stakeholder become more important. Another way to analyze stakeholders is by understanding their direction of influence, meaning how they impact the project based on their position. First, upward executives or senior management. These are stakeholders about the project team, such as executives or sponsors. They influence funding, strategy, and major decisions, so managing their expectation is crucial. Second, downward team members or subordinates. These are people who report into the project structure. They influence the project through their day to day work, task completion, and technical input. Third, outward or external stakeholders. This includes customers, suppliers, partners, and regulators. They influence the project through requirements, compliance needs, contracts, and external expectations. Fourth, sideward peers or other departments. These are colleagues at the same time organizational level. Other teams or departments, they influence the project through coordination, collaboration, and resource sharing. And here are the core principles that guide how we engage and manage our stakeholder effectively. First, understand your stakeholders. First, we identify who stakeholders are and understand their interest, influence, concerns, and expectation. Second, communicate purposefully. We tailor our communication style, frequency, and message depending on the stakeholder group to ensure clarity and relevance. Third, build relationships. Build trust and credibility is essential. Strong relationships help create alignment and reduce resistance. Fourth, engage early and continuously. Stakeholder engagement isn't something we do once. We start early and continue throughout the project to avoid surprises. Fifth, be transparent. We openly share progress, issues, and decisions so stakeholders stay informed and confident. Sixth, collaborate. Whenever it makes sense, we involve stakeholders in decision making to increase buy in and improve outcomes. Seventh, adapt and respond. Finally, we stay flexible. Stakeholder needs and attributes change, so we adjust our engagement strategy as needed. After looking at the key principles of stakeholder engagement, it's also important to understand that stakeholders don't all start at the same level of engagement. The PMI framework outlines 5 levels we commonly use. The first level is unaware. These stakeholders don't know much about the project, its purpose, or its impact. Our goal with them is simply to raise awareness and provide basic information. Next, we have resistant. These stakeholders are aware, but they may disagree with the project or fear its impact. With this group, we focus on addressing concerns and building trust. The third level is neutral. These individuals are informed but don't have strong feelings either way. For them, we aim to provide clarity and keep them engaged so they don't shift toward resistance. The fourth level is supportive. These stakeholders understand the value of the project and are generally positive. Our goal here is to maintain their support and keep communication consistent. Finally, we have leading. These are highly engaged stakeholders who actively support the project and may help drive decisions or remove barriers. We work closely with them and involve them more deeply in discussion. Understanding these levels helps us tailor our communication and engagement efforts based on where each stakeholder currently stands and where we want them to be.
Creating a stakeholder engagement plan. To engage stakeholders effectively, we start with a structured plan. First, we create a stakeholder profile. This includes their role, their level of influence, their interest, and any concerns they may have. Next, we define the engagement goals. What do we need from each stakeholder and what do they expect from us? Then, we design communication strategies, such as how often we communicate, what information we share, and which channels we use. We also determine the engagement approach, whether we will consult, collaborate, empower, or simply monitor their involvement. Finally, we define the success matrices, such as reduce conflicts, stakeholder satisfaction, timely feedback, and the participation levels. Then we have the effective communication strategies. Good engagement is impossible without good communication. This means keeping things clear and simple and adjusting our style depending on whom we are talking to is really important. Some stakeholders want a quick email, others prefer detailed reports, and some want visuals or dashboards. One thing that's really important is two-way communication. Listening is just as important, if not more important, than talking. And after every conversation, it is a good idea to confirm understanding. A quick recap goes a long way. We then have some of the engagement techniques. There are tons of ways to actually engage stakeholders. You can involve them in early planning, run workshops, do brainstorming sessions, or hold regular check-ins. You might collaborate directly with some stakeholders or empower them to make certain decisions. The key is making sure they feel included and heard. One thing to remember is that stakeholder engagement isn't something you set up once and forget. People's priorities change. New stakeholders can appear and situations shift. So, you need to keep monitoring how engaged people are and adjust your approach when needed. Updating your stakeholder register, communication plan, and overall strategy regularly helps keep everything aligned. Common challenges. Of course, it's not always easy. We often run into things like conflicting priorities, resistance to change, or just plain miscommunication. Sometimes we discover stakeholders late in the project. The best way to handle these challenges are being transparent, communicating frequently, listening actively, and working with stakeholders to solve the problems instead of working around them. If you want to be great at stakeholder engagement, here are a few best practices. Start as early as possible and keep the engagement going throughout the project. Focus on building real relationships, not just sending updates. Be clear about expectations. Make every interaction meaningful and always tailor your communication to the person. You can't use the same approach for everyone. Finally, keep track of what's working and what isn't and adjust based on feedback. To wrap up, strong stakeholder engagement leads to better decision, fewer surprises, and smoother project execution. Using simple tools, communicating clearly, and building trust can completely change how your project runs. Thank you so much for listening. Here are the list of links that we've used as reference for this video. Thank you so much.